Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of The Things We Know. I'm Lisa Callahan. I guess I should start there.
And
And
I'm
you are.
Carrie Morin.
And we want to start with some gratitude because even though you guys have heard several pods already, this is actually the first time we are recording since the launch on March 7th. And we wanted to spend a few seconds just really saying thank you and reflecting on how much it has meant to us for you guys to reach out. We don't know if you listened or not, but when you reach out and you're reflecting on what the topics have meant to you, it's meant a lot. It makes us really jazzed to continue this because it feels like it's already making an impact. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I 100%. I'm overwhelmed with so much gratitude and really receiving all the beautiful feedback and the genuine compliments on our chemistry, on our authenticity, on our ability to to be self-deprecating with ourselves and our families, and thanks to them for
Yes.
allowing it. And but also just reflecting the experience a lot of people are having with hope and humor, and I that's exactly what we wanted you to get out of it. And
Mm.
it just really made us so much more excited even going into today, because we know some people are listening, and we're so glad, and we hope you'll share it. And also, we want this to be a conversation with your contributions and your reflections, and this is what we love doing. We're going to do it anyway, but we're really glad you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've sort of branded this as a pod for women in their 40s and 50s and beyond. But one of the things I think I truly am the most shocked about is the women that are in their 20s and 30s who are reaching out and saying this is like a roadmap, or this is helping me think about things now. I'm not waiting until 50s, which I said in the first pod, like if I could make women be where we are now in their 20s, that would be awesome. I think part of it is life experience, and so that's not totally possible. But if you're getting something out of these different topics and you're utilizing it in your 20s and your 30s, I mean, that's woo. I love
Well,
it.
and you're way smarter than I was. I wouldn't have, like, if you're
Also
getting
that.
something at that. I was just thinking about it. It's kind of like, when you're in a crappy relationship and everyone's trying to tell you differently, you don't really listen until you're ready. But
Right.
same thing. Yeah, and I agree. And I feel apologetic to my mom, who always saying, but I have wisdom. So if you're out
Yeah.
there that in those age ranges and listening and taking that in, like, good for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we're just passing on things that we've learned from other women ahead of us too, which is so great. And also men, right?
Oh yeah.
We have four sons between us, and men
And two
friends that
husbands.
are, yeah, and men. I was gonna say men friends and husbands.
And men friends. A lot of men. And they're
Yes,
listening too, which I
they
am,
are.
and I guess again, we have
Yeah.
this brand in our head, and I started to realize as I was listening to the pods, like, oh crap, this isn't, I mean, yes, it's for women, and it's not a way to learn about women, but it's definitely, a lot of it is universal and not gender specific. And so,
Mm-hmm.
if for our men friends that are listening as well, like, thank you. And thank you for your reflections too. And if you know anyone, apparently at any age, any gender, that you think could get something out of this pod, please share, because we would really like to scale this. It feels even more important now based on the reflections we're getting to let more people hear this and
Yeah.
hopefully get something from it.
And yeah, it reminds me of someone asked me about it today, and I said, "Oh no, these aren't things we've mastered. These are things that we are talking about. These are things that we are connecting with as friends and as women and moms and coaches. These are the things that are important to us right now.
Yes. Yeah.
We're
Mastered.
yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Oh, we're good at this. Yeah. No, this is. Oh, I mean, at one point you wanted to call the pod The Things We Know Now,
Yeah.
right? Because we're still learning, and so this is not definitive by any stretch.
Well,
So,
the now is redundant because duh.
right. Oh, yes.
The
Good
things we
point.
knew at the date we recorded it.
Okay. Oh
Don't
my
hold
God.
us
That
to
would
it.
be a really long title.
We might know more later.
Right? Stay tuned.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you. We'll move now on to the topic. Carrie, I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, today's topic is sorry, not sorry. And I love it for a lot of reasons. And we've got there's probably a lot of songs that come up for a lot of people, or some past relationships, or something funny or sad that comes up for you when I say that, or something else. But what we mean by this is, there's different kinds of ways to think about the words I'm sorry. And one is apologies. And that's not really what this is. And because apologies are important when you are shitty with someone. And we're not saying never say sorry or never apologize. I was saying to Lisa earlier, the word sorry sometimes doesn't mean much to me because, I don't know, when you're in certain relationships, including parenting, when someone says sorry and they don't change their behavior, it starts to not mean as much. So that's a whole other thing, and maybe we'll have a pod about that, about genuine apology and repair and all that. That's not what this is. This is really us looking at ourselves, and our growth as women, the young women we know, the young women we were, and thinking about, the ways we walk through the world and sometimes dim our light. Sometimes it's about self-esteem. Sometimes it's about confidence. Sometimes it's just about, growing and finding our voice. And I, for one, am one of those women who, and gosh, if my sister's listening somewhere, she's probably going, yes, yes, for so long would be like, why do you say sorry so much? And
Your sister would say that to you.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Interesting. Okay.
And I would be like, because, like, I feel like I should, especially in that moment, because she's such a loving, compassionate person. And she's also really strong and tough in the ways I needed her to be. And so sometimes I would be a little intimidated, and she'd be like, why are you intimidated? Why are you saying sorry? Just say what you want. And it was really helpful, right? Because this is, when I was young, and she guided me that way, and really got me aware of it. And I will slide back into it sometimes. I will hear it, but nowhere near as much. And I know you were going to talk about women, right? And young girls, and I was thinking, even sometimes my sons go through that, oh, sorry, ope, ope,
the Midwestern ope.
Yeah. So yeah, like I think this doesn't even just apply to women. I think it applies to anybody who's finding their voice.
That's, amazing. I think, and I do think it's a little bit tied to confidence. You said that, but I am not somebody that, I don't remember ever being somebody that said sorry a lot. I reflect, and we'll probably reference this a lot over times. You may or may not know what this is, but I do reflect on it being somewhat my human design. Mm-hmm. I'm a manifester, and manifestors really don't care what other people think. They're just interested in their impact. That to me was what was so important in the reflections I was getting about the pod. It wasn't, the production's good. It was fun to hear we have good chemistry and things like that. But when somebody could say, this thing you said made me want to change, that is more important to me than whether you like me or not. And so I think because of that, I don't have a big sorry gene, but I do the Midwestern, yeah. I'm talking about, I'm just going to scooch right by here, all that kind of stuff. But it's not a problem. Right, my bad. And it is interesting because this does feel like a topic that I hope has younger women listen to, because Charlotte has told me that her boyfriend has pointed out how often she says she's sorry, which is interesting to me because I don't think of her as being someone, I think of her as being pretty strong. But when you said it, finding your voice, finding your footing, I think we apologize to protect ourselves. Like it's almost self-deprecating, right? Like if I say I'm sorry first, then you're not going to go after me for something I did,
Totally. And you're right. Sometimes in an extreme, it can be centering.
Yes.
In a way that's not good. If you make it about, just like all the energy has to go to making you feel comfortable enough to speak.
Right.
And so that can, obviously backfire. When you're really just, that's why I said self-confidence and self-esteem. And I do want to say more about that on another pod, because I do think there are two totally different mountains to climb, right? One is, when you get confidence from doing, you're gonna gain confidence from like finding your voice and just trying and being brave. And self-esteem is just, do you love yourself because you exist? And you got to work on that too, right? And so and you access them differently. So I really think some of that over apologizing is a self-esteem issue, whereas like you said, the other is a confidence. When you get good at your job, you stop apologizing, and you stop again, maybe the thing we were going to get into in a little bit is over explaining, but maybe we
Yeah.
can go there now.
Well, I just was one other thing that jumps out at me around saying I'm sorry, because this just happened to me the other day, is apologizing for feelings. Like somebody, a client messaged me with some pretty strong feelings, not towards me, but of something she was experiencing. And I, sent back, totally valid. I hear you. Yes, those feelings are, you're totally in the right to feel this way. And then she responded back, I'm sorry, I'm just having a bad day. I'm like, no, sorry. Like, there's no reason to apologize for being upset, for being mad, for being sad, so it goes back to the, having your feelings pod number 3. There's no need to apologize for how you feel in any given moment.
Oh, I love that. I think one of the things that's really helpful about living in an age of texting and emailing is it gives you an opportunity to notice when you're saying it, and before you press send, could you say exactly what you're saying without the apology or the over explaining?
And what better impact would it had without the sorry, right? Because the
Right.
sorry kind of starts to
Right.
dilute whatever you're
Right.
saying, right?
And I was saying before we started recording, officially, what to Lisa, and I did say sorry because we started recording and I made some noise and and I went, oh, sorry, and it was like, nope, we could have just restarted, right?
Right.
So one of the things I was saying to Lisa before that point was, you don't do it a lot, and I really admire it and appreciate it. It doesn't mean that you're ever a jerk and you don't apologize. Again, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you're a jerk.
I mean, when you're a jerk, Lisa, you do apologize. So I appreciate that. When you're an asshole.
Lisa owns her asshole behavior. No,
I
that is
totally
not
do.
my point. You don't apologize with those. You don't do that. And that I'm attracted to that. That is a quality in women around me that I find super admirable. And when I think of like all the people I admire, they either don't do it or they really stop doing it. And if you do it, I still love you and admire you. I just noticed this, right? I noticed this. And I think it's so helpful for us as women to, like you said, it would have gotten the same message to you, and even better if your client probably had said, I'm having a bad day.
Totally.
Yep. You take out the I'm sorry, and you please take out the just. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh my God. Just is another one.
Oh, it's an insidious word. It really just
Yes.
limits. It's an insidious I'm sorry. If you take out the I'm
Ooh.
sorry and you say I'm just having a bad day, you're really limiting
You're
your
still.
ability to have your feeling, right? And so it's an interesting thing that
Yeah.
if I could have edited it right before she pressed send, Lisa would have been like, "Go girl, have your bad
Yeah.
day."
Yeah.
And not that you didn't, but
Right,
like
right,
it would
right,
have had
but
the same impact or
totally.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right. Maybe not is not the impact to me in that moment per se,
Right.
but I know what you're saying. Like, I just wanted to point out, no one has to apologize for having a bad day. Nobody has to
Right.
apologize. Her reasoning of what she's going through was completely valid, and there's no reason to
Yeah.
apologize for being pissed about it.
Yes.
Period.
And this brings up something that what's so interesting is this is what I love about these conversations is we have a framework of what we want to talk about. We may never get to all of it in this one episode. We might in others. But this brings me into something I learned from my husband early on, which is, I grew up Catholic, got that natural Catholic guilt and
Me too.
and the people pleasing and all that stuff, which is, makes someone, agreeable and helpful when they're at their best doing that, right? And so when we got married and our both of our families are in the same town-ish, I mean one town apart in Southern California, and if we were going to stay at one house and not the other, if we were going to have dinner here or this holiday there, or we were going to come down and stay, I would say, 3 out of the 4 parents naturally were like, what?
Right, right,
wanted
of
us there,
course.
right?
Yep.
And
3 out of 4. Which one didn't care?
my dad, because they were both from Rochester, New York, and they had gone through it too. Like
Gotcha.
literally crossing a bridge between both places. And he said, wait, you have kids. No one will care where you are. They'll just want your kids. And that was kind of funny. But my point being, when I was apologizing a lot, my husband said, stop saying sorry, because if you or stop feeling bad is what he said, because if you feel bad you kind of are guilty, like you kind of did do something. So my point in that is, if I, and not to belabor this sweet wonderful amazing client of yours, but like even that little thing, if I cancel on someone with an apology and really diminish my ability to feel that, I'm gonna feel failure-ish. I'm gonna feel defeated when
Mm,
I instead of gifting myself, I'm having a bad day, can't make the call. And I'm not even sure if it was that, but I'm having a bad day, I'm canceling something, or I'm having a bad day, I didn't do the thing we said we were gonna do, whatever. I could just own it and gift myself whatever I need to do in that moment versus like I just think our I just see I think and I know the way it works here is the words we say to ourselves matter and they affect the way we're holding space and the way we're treating ourselves and allowing ourselves to experience whatever we're experiencing or saying what we want to say. So we risk when we apologize when we shouldn't apologize or when we don't need to apologize, we risk actually feeling sorry.
that's such a good point. Yeah. And also, I just want to reflect. You said I grew up Catholic and I have Catholic guilt. I also grew up Catholic. I have no.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, it's, again, I don't know where this.
Well, I
I
don't think
feel.
Catholics own the guilt. My Jewish friends will
Well,
be
that's
right
true.
there
We
with
all,
me,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But I think I wanted to point that out because I also don't love the idea of thinking I can't get out of this because I have Catholic guilt or I have Jewish guilt or I have fill in the blank,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like, I think sometimes we fall back on an excuse, right? Well, I
Right.
grew up this way. No, no, no. You can change it. You get a choice as to whether you want to change your language. And
Right.
so you mentioned the thing I do that I'm aware of. I don't say sorry, but my sort of tick that feels similar only in that it's yet another way, like just, quote unquote, just, that women try. I think we protect ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Again, this idea of if I say it first, then you can't tell me I did something wrong. So I do a lot of when I'm talking to someone and I'm sharing an idea or giving some direction, I find myself saying, does that make sense? And so I read this somewhere 6 or 8 months ago and I got really clear on I don't want to say that. And it took me a really long time. And I had to share it with people. Like I shared it with my boss. And so he would catch me every time I'd say it. We'd get to laugh and I'd say, does, like I'd have to stop myself mid sentence because it really, again, of course, it makes sense. Like the better question is, do you have any questions? What are your thoughts on that? Because then if whatever I said didn't actually make sense, they could reflect that back to me instead of assume by saying that it makes it sound like I don't think I know what I'm talking about.
Yes, and you do.
Right.
One of the tricks that I don't know if someone taught me this or if I developed it or gleaned it. I don't I don't, there's somebody out there who talks about there's no original things, everything's an idea sex because everyone's kind of kind of getting ideas from someone else and molding them together. But when you want to deliver something that you might over explain, you say it and then
Oh, take a sip of water
take a sip
or
of water
wine in my
or
case.
wine. You take a sip or take a
So
breath
good. Yeah.
and let it land
I love that.
and then how's that sitting with you or any questions. And it's a real like wonderful way for both parties or all parties there to synthesize the information and then come up with questions without you needing to do it for them.
Mm.
And I don't know if I ever told you this, but this sort of applies, right? Because we're both coaches. One of the like most poignant moments when I was first learning and doing skills labs, I accidentally muted, and I was over explaining my question. I asked a question and then I said, in other words, blah 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 blah, instead of just letting that question sit, and I accidentally muted. I have some big cheeks. Accidentally muted. I think I must have been on the phone. And later, the feedback was that pause was everything.
That is
like,
amazing.
yeah.
That
So,
is so funny.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, and I've had that same experience when I trained to be a Weight Watcher leader. We were one of the things we were trained was to ask a question of the group and wait 8 seconds. And 8 seconds doesn't sound very long, but it is interminable when you're just standing there in front of 30 people and you've asked a question and they're all just sitting there. And, then of course you always have the great ones who always answer, but that's a long time. And it allows for some thought, and or somebody's going to jump in, So I love that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you need an 8-second pause when you're talking one-on-one, but I love the taking a sip.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
I
great
love
one.
that. One of the things we were talking about too is the I'm sorry thing. And I think if you haven't seen it, people can Google it. There's some great, videos going around. I don't know if they're TikToks or if it predated TikToks about how often women say sorry in the workplace and how that
Mm,
gets studied. And, how like is what is it? Is it insecurity? Is it empathy? Right? There's that whole
mm-hmm.
like, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. Meaning like I feel bad for you. Like I'm feeling for you. And sometimes when I say to my oldest, he'll tell me something, didn't go well at work, and I'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry that happened." He's like, "It's not your fault." I'm like, "Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I'm
I wasn't taking that on.
it had nothing to do with me, right?"
Right.
So I wonder if there's other better words for that, like, "Oh, that sucked," or that
Yeah, I think
that
I
must
use
have
I hear
sucked.
you a lot, but I've done
Yeah,
that too. I've had conversations where somebody's reflected something that didn't go well, or they had a bad day, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And then they get almost defensive, like, it's fine. I'm like, well, okay, all right, but I'm still like, I'm sorry you had that experience,
right,
So maybe it is
right,
I hear you, I see you,
right.
something along those lines.
So yeah, so insecurity, lack of confidence, empathy, guilt, or just polite, like
Oh,
oh, right? And yeah, I think the over apologizing is a lot of what we're getting at with sorry not sorry, because that can undermine your authority, your voice, and it's going to negatively impact the the conversation, right?
yes,
Whether it's going to make someone feel bad for you or make someone not sure if they should have confidence in what you're saying. And
yes.
I think it always comes with the best of intentions, and hopefully even just listening to this, it's going to be an invitation to notice it.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was thinking that. I was like, if there's a call to action around this pod, it's like, just catch yourself, don't apologize to yourself for apologizing, but just notice, because I hope any of these things that we talk about on the things we know is an opportunity to, you can't unknow what you know now. So you're going to notice these things more often after we've talked about them. And then this is a coaching thing, but get curious. Why are you saying
Mm-hmm.
sorry? Are you saying, literally asking yourself, okay, do I say sorry in moments to protect myself? Do I say sorry
Mm-hmm.
to dim my light? Do I say sorry out of empathy? Like, really, if you're catching yourself a lot doing that, saying that a lot, get curious as to what the intention behind it is. Are you
Mm-hmm.
doing it to center yourself? I mean, that's a big one. That's a good one,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
Yeah, that's a
centering.
really
Yeah,
good one. Yeah, if you are apologizing and feeling so bad, you might freeze whatever's happening for people to make you feel better, and that's
right.
probably not your intention.
No.
Um, I think when we were talking about this, I found it was a Forbes article about why women apologize so much. So it said in a University of Waterloo, Canada study, it found that women tend to apologize more often, surprise, surprise, because they have a lower threshold than men for what they consider offensive.
That's interesting.
And yeah, that's a whole thing, right? Like how we're supposed to be. So if we cross over, so I wonder if some apologizing comes from, guess what? We
We
can
have
be
a low
just as
tolerance for
offensive. Yeah.
bullshit.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Like, oops, sorry.
yeah, yeah.
So that's interesting. Tara Swart, a neuroscientist and who contributed to the article, she wrote a book called The Source: Open Your Mind, Change Your Life. She says serial apologists, I like that. Are you a
Mm-hmm.
serial apologist? They mostly do so out of habit, and it often stems from, I'm going to, she says, it perhaps stems from childhood where they were made to feel wrong or fearful of punishment,
Mm.
right? Or maybe a past relationship, who knows where that comes from, but it becomes a habit when you aren't feeling maybe emotionally safe, or or just not safe. You aren't feeling totally like you belong and you get to be yourself, right?
Mm,
So according to her, apologizing when we've done something wrong is a strength, of course, right? Like that's what
yep.
we were saying. That's a strength. If you don't apologize when you do something wrong, you're a jerk. But compulsive apologizing presents as a weakness at work and in personal relationships. Okay, so this is the rub. Like, be listening for it. What's an apology and what's a I'm not worthy.
Totally. And it's a subtle weakness, right? Because we
Right.
are used to doing it and hearing it. But I do think it's one of the ways that we undermine ourselves, our abilities, our confidence by constantly apologizing. And everything we do has a positive intention, even if it's not serving us. So that
Mm,
curiosity about why we are saying sorry so much, it's like anything. Great, yeah, you can change a habit, sure, but if you don't know why you do what you do, it will come back. But when you can get real clear on the why of what you're doing and how it is serving you, then you can make a change. Like me, I knew I
mhm,
knew what I was doing. And so then I made a conscious decision. I actually had to put a post-it note of different phrases to say instead, and
mhm,
I would stop and take a breath. I'm thinking about this all now as you're saying it. Like I'd explain something and I'd be like,
mhm.
tell me what you're thinking about that, but I had to
Yes.
physically stop myself because my automatic reaction was to say, I hope that makes sense, or does that make
Hmm.
sense? um
Yes.
so yeah,
I
knowing why you do something is helpful in changing it.
I think I told you this that recently I caught myself about to send a text, which is brings me back to that, that other text that was somewhat apologetic, had a jest in it, and was also over explaining why I didn't want to do something. And it was, I didn't want to pay for something I wanted to reimburse, and here's why, because and it was with my son, but it was, really, when I looked at it, I thought, okay, I don't have to justify this. Also, my explanation could accidentally make him feel like I'm not expecting more from him, and that wasn't even my, you know
Mm.
what I mean? It was that
Mm-hmm.
thing. And then I got rid of everything except for, can I just reimburse you? And then I took out just, can I reimburse you? And I sent it, and he
Nice.
was like, "Yep." It was so interesting. Like, what was all this stuff coming through me in that moment? Which, again, like I said, I don't have all this perfected, but I have the tool to recognize it, laugh at myself, take it out, and be like, "That's all I'm saying." And I am an editor. Like, I do edit really well, but I don't always self edit. And this is one of those things I've developed over time, right? With
Yeah.
some skills is, what do I want to say? And all the rest of it dilutes it and creates crap that we don't need.
Yeah. And can get confusing, right?
Yeah,
Like you just said, like then all of a sudden the actual message is lost in it.
right. Well,
Yeah.
because then when you send it again, you've somehow imprinted on yourself that you're feeling yucky enough to say
Yeah.
that. And I felt great once I scrubbed that out. I was like, yeah, I feel good. I didn't
Yeah.
even think about it again.
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's a good piece too about like that it just hangs over your head when you've apologized, because now there's some sense, like you said earlier, that you've
I
done
owe
something wrong.
someone's, yeah, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm in
Oh,
the
I love that.
deficit.
Yeah. Can you finish off with this little piece from Madeline Bury? I think this
Oh
is so
yeah, this was
fascinating too.
interesting. This was also, I think, in that same article. Madeline Bury, a freelance writer living in New York, she tried an experiment where she stopped apologizing for a week, and she said she searched her inbox for the word sorry, and she was horrified. Okay, and she ended up putting in a browser extension that warned her every time she typed an apology. Isn't that cool? So she said it had become a verbal tick, like saying It was something that she would reach for when she really wasn't sure what to say. I think that's so important, right? To just set up a filter for yourself, whether it's in your own mind or you actually get help from technology to do it, or ask someone near you. Please let me know, because it does become a tick when, it's kind of like sometimes cussing when you're not reaching for a word that you would like to use, right? So
No,
I don't
that
mean
doesn't
you.
work for me.
Just
Nope.
for me.
I'm always reaching for the word I'm using.
There are times when I use a word when I'd rather say something specific, especially around one of my kids, because I'll be like, I didn't mean that. This is what I meant, right? But my point is, I have a verbal tick
Mhm.
for things like apologies. So the experiment helped her, really rethink it. And she eventually found it unnecessarily taxing and deleted it because I think probably she got into a better habit. And she finally said, I get it. Maybe women apologize a lot. And this is funny. And she said, but the counterpoint is, why don't men apologize more? Maybe we should stop thinking of apologizing as such a bad thing, which I think is funny. And I think more goes to, are people taking responsibility when they mess up versus are they dimming their voice when they aren't feeling confident? Those are two different things. And that's how I took it. That's how I distilled this down is she took out apologizing too much because it was unnecessary, but there's something good about apologizing when necessary.
Absolutely. Yes. And again, that could be talking about what a true apology looks like could be a topic in the future.
Yes.
So I'm giggling as you're talking because I was having a text conversation earlier with a friend who happens to be a man. So see, I do like that. No, that's an earlier conversation. Anyways, we were talking because we've said we want to try to quote something every pod that relates to this. And while we were talking, this actually, I know he's not texting me this for this pod, but it's beautiful. So the quote today is going to be from Sid Vicious via Frank Sinatra. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. Sorry, not sorry.
That.
So thank you, David, for texting that to me at exactly the right time, even though you didn't know it.
That's awesome. I love it. So good. I know there are so many different songs that we thought about. That is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, there is Sorry, Not Sorry by Demi Lovato, but I looked at those lyrics. I'm like, this doesn't, I don't know, this didn't land for me. But regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. Chef's Kiss. Perfect for Sorry, Not Sorry.
Yay.
Well, I am not sorry we did this pod. This is perfect.
I am not sorry either.
If you have any reflections on this, again, we would love you to go to the Facebook page, which is the Things We Know podcast on Facebook. And, we're putting up extra content. So if you want to comment on some of these things, we'll always be putting up the tiles for this. So if you want to comment under there, we would love to know how this is landing for you. Yes, we love the texts and the DMs, but let's start a conversation on that page as well so that we can all be in community around the things we're learning. Because Kari and I are learning too, and we want to learn from you, as we've said.
Exactly, because you know things that we don't know.
That's true. That's true.
Yay.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this episode of The Things We Know. Thank you so much for listening. Kari, you want to take us out?
Yeah. And remember to find us on your wherever you listen to podcasts, and to find us on Instagram, The Things We Know Pod, Facebook, The Things We Know Podcast, and wherever else you want to follow us, we're there.
And if you want to watch these videos.
Oh yeah, YouTube. Thank you.
You missed it because Kari said something just as I took a sip of wine and I almost spit it all over the computer, but you can't hear that on the pod. So if you want to see that happen, you can go to YouTube, The Things We Know podcast, and watch this video. So
yes, and subscribe.
Yep, hit the subscribe button or the follow. On Spotify, it's follow. So,
yes, or the follow button. Thank you. Things. And we will see you next time, and we're super excited you're here.
Thanks, everyone.
So long.
Bye.
Bye.